So you've got a summer or a winter holiday planned and you don't know what to pack. We're going to discuss this in this video. Hey everybody, this is Victor from Focused on Wildlife, and this is
Felix, Focus on Wildlife.
Today we're going to discuss what are you going to pack when you go to a warm climate like Africa or
Cold climate like Svalbard or Norway.
So what are you going to pack? We're going to give you a couple of ideas based on our experiences.
Victor and I have a wealth of experience in different destinations, but we have one common enemy, which is airlines. And so we'll touch up on weight restrictions and how you can get around them to make sure that once you go into your dream destination, you can take all that you need with you in the most optimized way on your trip.
So the biggest thing to consider when you're going on a safari or on a trip in Africa or India is dust. Dust is something that's going to get into your camera, it's going to get into your hair, it's going to get all over really, and it's going to bother you. So ask your tour guides, ask somebody who's been, but do this homework before you go and find out about dust. Okay, so dust is one thing. Second thing I wanted to show you is bag to take. This bag that I take is quite big. You don't need as big a bag on safari because you can have all the stuff next to you, right? So the bag is as big as it is for traveling mostly. So show you a little bit about this bag. It's just got a place for a laptop, most bags do. And inside it's pretty simple. I don't have many divisions because I want to keep this as simple as possible. I don't have straps opening and closing. All of that just adds to how long it takes to get the camera and what I want out of it. So I just keep everything quite simple. What I would take, there's always the consideration about whether to take one lens or two lenses, one camera or two cameras. I would always take two cameras or two lenses and connected from the start. Don't go and try and change your lens in the middle of a dust storm. It will go on your sensor and it will be a problem to get rid of, especially while you're away from home. At home, you probably do find a way to get rid of it. So what I would normally take is I'll take this guy, and this is my 300 2.8. So this is the trusty 300 2.8. My go-to lens is my favorite lens, and as you can see, it fits in this bag quite comfortably with its hood on. So I do that because when I photograph around the UK, I don't want to be struggling too much with my hood and putting it on, taking it off. So I've got a bag that's big enough to keep this on. However, when you travel, it's probably a good idea to get rid of this hood. Put it in your packed in luggage, and do that because, not because it's heavy, because this is basically a bit of plastic, but because it's chunky. And so you'd rather have that space in the bag that you're going to have next to you. This bag is always next to me on the flights when I travel wherever. The checked-in bag disappears onto a belt. You can also get 3D printed covers nowadays. I stick to my 300. I've also got a 500 and some people have got a 600. I don't take that on safari. Two reasons. It's heavy, it's chunky, so it probably wouldn't fit in this bag. Okay, it would without the hood, but it's a cumbersome thing. And secondly, it's really not necessary. So most of the places you go on safari, the drivers and the guides are going to get you quite close to the wildlife and quite close to where you want to be. So instead of you having to reach the wildlife with your lens, you reach there on vehicle or on foot, whatever the case may be. And so the 300, in my opinion and in my experience, is probably the ideal range. Another one I take with me is the 70-200. It just gives me the option of a couple of different shots. It may even be that the 300 is too close. So I've had it where I've had leopards basically within touching distance, and at 300 you get no shots. 70-200 is a nice zoom. It's nice and light. I would probably also get rid of this hood. Same sort of thing. It doesn't weigh much, but it is chunky. I'd stick that into the bag and I'll just travel with that. Put it in there. Another thing, don't ever leave home without them, is batteries. The other thing about batteries is always fly with them next to you. Don't check them in, because sometimes bags don't make it into check-in because of it. So batteries or something you want to keep with you, and always take a few. I've got one in each camera, so my second camera is not here, but I've got one in each camera and 3 spares. So 5 batteries always back with me. I usually take a converter with me because I spoke about a 500, and a 500 is probably too much. But if I really needed a 300 with a 1.4 converter, it gives me 420 at f4 as a minimum, and that is plenty. And that, when I compare it to a 500, it's really 80 millimeters worth of focal length, which is not going to make any sort of difference. So that is my bag. I will then just fill this up with maybe with clothes or with other little accessories, but that is really what I take on safari.
Okay, so contrary to Victor, in the hot countries, cold countries, you don't have to worry about dust. The main problem is snow, but as long as it stays below freezing, you can just brush it off and it shouldn't be a concern. Some great words of advice here from Victor. Do not try and change your lenses if it's a sandstorm, same with snowstorm. Obviously, if you have to, just be careful, tilt your camera down and be mindful of anything getting into the sensor. But the main difference is where I go is I tend to carry my entire world with me, and we'll talk about this bad boy in a second. But the main consideration is I tend to have way more options when it comes to camera stuff, because I like to carry too much and have the options than wishing I had something with me. And to do this, I found a little cheat code, which I think is the airline industry hasn't caught up to yet, is that they often put a weight limit on your carry-on, but it's mainly the overhead, rarely the under seat. And so I use a combination of these 2 bags to carry everything that is required for my trip with me at all times, so I don't miss anything when I get to my destination. So the first one will be this internal camera unit, and in here I can load up so much equipment. So laptop for processing in the field, but also for backup in the field to make sure I don't lose any of my content. In here I will have the 2 camera bodies. The second one is the one currently filming. A wide zoom, usually for video and landscapes. A medium zoom, a bit like what Victor was mentioning, for close-ups. And also all of the extra accessories which are required to make sure that I can keep on shooting the entire time. So batteries, spare cards, cables, brushes, and all of this. Some of the wildlife I photograph tends to be very far. So on Svalbard you can have very distant sightings of polar bears, but they can equally go as close to the ship. So that's why you need everything from 15 to 600 plus extenders. And I tend to use the stock bag that came with the lens, because the combination of the 2 does not exceed 8 kilograms, which is usually the weight limit for the overhead luggage. Now, obviously, in the field, I'm not going to be carrying 2 bags and sort of putting things together as I photograph. So I tend to, when I get there, have my equipment always ready and carry it all in the big backpack behind me. So once the camera is mounted on the lens, I tend to have the internal camera unit a bit like in Victor's bag, in its separate little compartment, and with a bit of convincing, usually I can get it no problem. And now I have a dedicated area for camera equipment, which is easy access. And then the most important lens and camera, which is the 600. I can put it in the bag, especially if I've got, you know, my tent or sleeping bag or food and fuel for the day or whatever. And so I simply strap it to the top of my bag, like so. And then if I need to take a quick picture, all I have to do is put the bag down onto the lid and I'm ready to shoot. Now, if it's a snowstorm or the conditions are not optimal, I will also tend to put this at the end of the hood, not to collect any snow or spindrift inside the hood. And that's it. That's how I pack for my winter trips. Hope you found this insightful and that will help you plan your next adventure. Obviously, Victor and I have had lots of experience with different destinations and or airlines. So if you have a specific question, please leave it in the comment section below. Same goes for different video ideas, because that will give us fuel to give you more content to watch in the coming weeks. But I'll let Victor close this video with final thoughts.
Yeah, hopefully we answered some of your questions. We didn't give you more questions than answers. But if you do have questions, like Felix said, just leave it in the comments below. We're looking forward to it, and see you next time.
See you out there.